Education instills confidence. Confidence instills hope. And hope spreads peace. Good morning to one and all present here and all those who have joined this morning to participate in the National Faculty Development Program organized by Jyotinivas College Autonomous. Jyotinivas College is a premier women's institution that has been shaping the lives of young women over several years. With its motto, Let Your Light Shine, Jyotinivas College has sparkled its way through various cycles of accreditation by NAC. We are proud to be re-accredited by NAC with an A+ in 2021. This morning, we begin with aspirations that surge towards excellence through this faculty development program. Education, being the spark that lights up the lives, has inspired today's theme, Pedagogy and Learning, Mapping New Approaches. As we journey along the path of learning, the importance of working towards an equitable and holistic educational system, which is skill-centric and outcome-based, is the need of the hour and is our prime focus. We have been blessed with educationists from all over the nation attending this 7-day faculty development program. And quoting Mahatma Gandhi, we hope to be the change that we want to see. Let us join hands and work for the future of education. At the outset, we begin with the auspicious lighting of the lamp by our dear principal, Dr. Sister Lalita Thomas, which will be followed by prayer. Thank you, dear sister and dear faculty members, for lighting that flame of excellence. Let us pray. God of the universe, author of life, supreme Lord, source of knowledge and wisdom, we come before you to receive your blessings. Give us the wisdom that we may use to the full the gifts and talents that you have given us. Help us respect all people as members of one great family. Help us to know you, the beginning of wisdom. May we see you and your love. May your presence go with us, your love sustain us, and your peace abide with us. Amen. Integrity, insight, and inclusiveness are the essential qualities of leadership. One dynamic leader who possesses and carries out all of this with ease is our dear principal, Dr. Sister Lalita Thomas. I now call upon our principal to give us her message.
A very good morning to our dear participants on this happy morning the third day of the year. We are happy to greet each of our participants present virtually. I should say, today, JNC is celebrating your presence, or we, the teachers, the backbone of our society. We believe that education is a soul of any society. And so today, it's right and proper that we celebrate our role, our calling as a teacher. And this FTP that is organized for the coming 7 days is meant to help each one of us to appreciate our role as being a teacher who's ready to learn, act, and impact, a teacher who can dare to envision, to create, to transform, to innovate, a teacher whose whole purpose is to facilitate new life. I would rightly put it. We have the power to create, and I would turn to a seed, a seed, a good seed in a good soil. The output is hundredfold. So just imagine, as teachers, we have the power to create such seeds. And imagine that we have also the power to create such good soil. What an unbelievable power is entrusted into our hands by God the Creator to continue His creation in the way we take forward our calling as a teacher. And we remain grateful to our God, to our society, which believes in us and continues to support us, encourage us, motivate us to play our role as best as we can. And to make a difference, education is perennial. And so learning has to be continuous. And if our education has to be relevant, we need to update ourselves continuously. And that path, we have this FTP intended to help each of us to develop our potential so that we can be real facilitators who can help thousands of students who come to our portals, offline, online mode, to enable their part to create. These last 2 years has been and brought in a significant change in learning and teaching. And turning to technology as an important tool in teaching and learning, we have new challenges. And I hope the 7 days of FTP will help us bring in insight that we can together weave a web that can really capture the sense and essence of what education is for us today at this given scenario. As a teacher, I love this calling to be a teacher. And I wish each of us appreciate and love our profession. And I wish that we celebrate as teachers together and form a strong community of learners, a community that will actually help in the growth of human society. We, the soul, we, the backbone, we, the architect, we, the hope of the society. Let us, without any reserve, let our light shine. And may our world be ignited with that power of knowledge that can take us. As it is said, there is no end to learning, discovering, and there is no end to fullness of life. So let education give us life. Let education lead us in the path of justice. Let education kindle in us the tenderness to act and love and think tenderly, honestly, with compassion, care, and concern for one another, building this human race, making a difference with our presence. Let all of us become a beacon of hope and blessing to one another. May God bless us this morning, continue to bless us all through these 7 days and through the years. Let this 2022 be a year of celebrating our greatest strength of life and experience the miracle of being together in our mission of learning and teaching. I am indebted to our resource persons who have accepted generously to share their knowledge. And I appreciate everyone who have registered for this FTP. May all of us reap a rich harvest. God bless us once again. Thank you.
Thank you, dear sister, for your words of wisdom. And yes, let us all be the beacons of light, putting our heart and soul in being the architect of the future and education. Knowledge emerges through invention and reinvention, through continuing hopeful inquiry with the world and with each other. This knowledge, when put to good use, paves the path to an abundant future. We proceed to our first session for today. I call upon Ms. Satya to introduce and welcome our resource person for today. This session will be moderated by Dr. Rima Lobo. Over to Ms. Satya.
Good morning. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our resource person for this session, Dr. Bob Schoenfeld, a prolific academician and scholar. He has completed his bachelor's and master's degree in the fields of history and English language and linguistics, respectively. He is a PhD holder in education, specializing in the area of leadership and innovation from Arizona State University. Dr. Schoenfeld has had several years of experience as a teacher trainer and English language specialist. At Arizona State University, he has been the director of Global Education Center, providing linguistic, academic, social, and cultural support services to 1,800 international students at the W.P. Carey School of Business. He has designed, implemented, and conducted curricula as well as established and directed in-house international student writing courses. In addition, he has shepherded several staff and faculty-focused professional development programs and carried out English language pedagogy courses for university professors for countries like Bahrain, India, Japan, and Vietnam. At present, he is a faculty associate in Fulton School of Engineering, Arizona State University, where he continues to inspire students to develop curricula and conduct workshops for programs like Young Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative. His achievements include presentations in the United States, France, Korea, and China on myriad areas like transforming educators in a smart school environment, reading and writing fluency, and engaging international students. He is professionally affiliated to TESOL International Association and English language programs in the United States Department of State. We are honored to have a multifaceted personality like you amidst us, sir. Over to you. Before that, a small announcement. A note for participants. The questions that you may have for our speaker is to be put in the chat box. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Very hard to begin after that kind of introduction. I really appreciate it. Before I begin my presentation, I wanted to just say thank you for having me, and even thank you for showing the video at the beginning, showing me the school where everyone is working and spending so much of their time that takes them away from their families. I love schools and I love libraries. Those are the two places I love the most. I love a school and I love a library. And whenever I travel abroad, I always like to see the schools and I like to see the libraries, and that makes me happy. So thank you for showing that video. It was really, really, really cool. The second thing I want to mention before I begin was I wanted to say that some of the comments made by Dr. Thomas really resonated with me, and I hope they resonated with you. She referred to our profession as seeds and soil, and our students and us as seeds and soil. When she said that, my brain, because I'm like that, starts thinking, and I'm like, wow, that's a great analogy. They are seeds and there is soil. And what I want to emphasize during my talk today is that not all seeds grow the same way. Not all seeds need the same amount of rain. Not all seeds need the same amount of soil. And that's our students. They're not all the same. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And when we teach our students, we can't treat them all like rose seeds or cactus seeds, because they're individuals and we need to treat them like that and care for them the way that they need to be. So I really kind of felt that analogy when she said that. And the second thing that Dr. Thomas said was that we have to, and I wrote this down, update ourselves continuously. And I agree with that. I'm a teacher trainer. I'm a teacher and I'm a teacher trainer. And that's one thing that I consistently say, that every semester we should be a little bit better. We don't have to be a lot better every semester, just a little bit. Let's find one aspect of our job, our profession, and let's focus on that. And the following semester be a little bit better. None of us are finished products as educators. We all can continue to improve and be better. So I wanted to say that before I begin my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and hope that my computer does not explode. You know how technology is sometimes. Okay. Let me go ahead and do this. And all right. So again, this is me, and I want to thank the introduction. They said it much better than I ever could. The thing that I want to say is that, as I mentioned, I'm a teacher. It's who I am. It's how I identify. It's what I like to do. If I'm gonna be away from my family, I want to do it. I want to be somewhere that I'm passionate about, and that is a classroom. Whether as a student, I love being a student. I have multiple graduate degrees, so you know I like being on this side of the desk, and I love teaching. I love being on the other side of the desk, and I love that entire dynamic. I think the teacher-student dynamic is probably the most important dynamic outside of the family dynamic. I think you as educators have the power to change the world. I do. It may sound cliche, it may sound hokey, but I believe that. I believe that if, using Dr. Thomas's analogy, if we pay attention to the seeds and the needs of them, then we can do really, really impressive things, really important things. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So some of the things that we're going to work on today is we're going to talk about the distinction between pedagogy and andragogy. We're going to look at the relevance of andragogy when teaching university students. And what I find to be the most important thing is we're going to start looking at philosophies of teaching and how you can start creating a relevant, practical philosophy of teaching, something that informs your style. What is not a goal is I'm not looking to change your values or your perspectives on education. I'm not trying to make you teach like I teach. That's a terrible idea. What we want is for you to be able to find your strengths and your values and your perspectives and use that to be the most effective and efficient teacher possible. So that's what we're looking at today. Now, what we kind of think about is that most university faculty, they have higher degrees in their field, whether that's in the arts, whether you're teaching history or psychology or journalism, or whether you're in the sciences and you're teaching chemistry, biology, engineering. You all have terminal degrees or graduate degrees in that field, but most of the faculty in universities are not generally trained as educators. They kind of get that thrust upon them afterwards, right? So some of these topics we're going to look at today, maybe you're familiar with some of them and maybe you're not. That is not a problem. But these are things that get you thinking about the way that you teach, the way that you approach a class. And this will be relevant whether you're teaching in history or journalism or engineering. We need you to be thinking about your role as an educator and how that works. So that's what we're going to be talking about. I would love to come and work with every department individually. Unfortunately, that's not possible. So I want to make sure that I can touch on topics that apply to all of you, okay? Now, first thing we need to recognize is this idea of pedagogy versus andragogy. Now, these words look the same. I actually really enjoy these words. I have a master's degree in linguistics, so I'm a very nerd when it comes to language. And I love these two words. I love the root. I love that ago or ago means guide in education, because that's what we're doing. We're guiding students as educators. We guide them from what they don't know to what they need to know, and then to use what they know. We are guides. That's what we do, right? So, someone used the term shepherd before, and I like that term. So, but the difference in these words is the beginning. Andra versus ped, man versus child. And what I want to look at more is comparing this idea of teaching pedagogy, which is really kind of the idea of teaching to children, not necessarily children by age, but children in the sense of not knowing or being lower than the teacher, right? So versus andragogy, which is teaching adult. Now, andra means man, but I think it's the 21st century. I think that we can change man and just say adult. So pedagogy, the teaching of children, andragogy, the teaching of adults, because we would teach them differently, wouldn't we? We would teach them differently. And that's what we're going to look at today. So we're going to look at differences between college students and K-12 students, right? We're going to be looking at these differences when you are working with them. Now, andragogy has only been around for 50, 60 years as an area of research. Pedagogy has been around for 2,000 years or for 3,000 years, right? That's the idea of Plato and Aristotle walking around Greece and bestowing knowledge, right? So andragogy has has a long way to go to catch up to in terms of the practical research that's being done in andragogy. So that's something I want you to be thinking about here. The 5 things that I'll be addressing here will be the learning behavior, the role of learner's experience, the orientation to learning, the readiness to learn, and the motivation to learn. So regardless of what you are teaching, what your field is, all of these should have some relevance. These are things that we should be thinking about when we, when we get our first roster of students are going into class. So these are the 5 things that we're talking about: learning behavior, role of the learner's experience, orientation to learning, readiness, and motivation to learn. Now, are there other things that we should think about? Of course there are. There's lots of other components to what we do, but I wanted to focus on these because they're relevant in their differences between adults and kids. Now, one more thing I want to mention about this is one of the reasons why this is relevant is I am coming from a Western style of education, right? As opposed to an Eastern style of education. When I tend to do these types of workshops, when I'm in Asia or Southeast Asia, the education history is one of teacher-centered, student just there to absorb information. Like Paulo Freire said, vessels to be filled with our knowledge. Western education is a little bit more egalitarian in the sense that we kind of bring the teacher and the student closer together. So that is another way of looking at the difference between pedagogy and andragogy. Pedagogy is when the student is here below, waiting to be filled with information, whereas andragogy is where it's more of a collaboration. That is one way of looking at it. So these are what we're going to be looking at here. Now, when it comes to this first one, learning behavior, some of the differences are right here. So adult learners tend to be self-directed, right? Adult learners, meaning college level learners, tend to be more self-directed. They expect more control over their learning experience. They tend to, they choose their majors, they take their classes, they choose their electives, they have a little bit more control. They are 100% responsible on their own learning. I don't agree. I'll get back to that in a minute. Okay. They also deeply involved in evaluating their learning, right? And they know what knowledge they want to acquire. And this is a big difference between when you are teaching high school, middle school, or elementary school, right? College students tend to be evaluating you and what you are teaching them. Younger learners are not often self-directed, right? They still depend on the teachers throughout the entire process, and the teachers are responsible, right? So this is one of the differences between andragogy and pedagogy. Now you'll see here at the bottom, I put a little note, and I always say this. It's okay to disagree with me. I sometimes disagree with other experts. It is okay to disagree with anything I say here, right? If you disagree, that's great. You have your own experiences, you have your own perspectives, your own strengths. What I ask is, if you disagree, don't be reactive about it. Don't make it a reaction. That's when we tend to disagree based upon, oh, that's not my experience. If you disagree, that's fine, but have a well-reasoned argument why you disagree. That's what I ask for, because I don't know everything, right? I don't. My wife tells me that all the time. I don't know everything. So if you disagree, which is fine, have a good, well-reasoned reason why you don't. For example, I disagree with this part here that says they are 100% responsible for their own learning. I happen to disagree with that. I think we have a very large responsibility in the teaching of older students, of college level students. And that's okay. My strengths, my perspectives, the way that I conduct a class, I tend to own more responsibility. So as we go through this, and if you see a bullet point you don't agree with, that's okay. Think about why you disagree with it. Is it worth changing what you think? Is it worth holding on to what you think? We want to be open with all of this. We want to be willing to learn new things. So if you disagree, that's fine. If you have any questions, by the way, you can always submit your questions and we can go over them at the end. Okay, but this is learning behavior. Let's move on to the role of learners' experience in their education. Now, clearly, students, by the time they get to university and college, they have more experience than younger learners. There's more things for you to use to build upon when you are creating lesson plans or you are looking at ways to support course objectives, right? Personal experiences are often excellent ways of engaging students in the classroom. What do they do if they've had jobs or sports or experiences or traveling, anything that we can use to engage them more effectively and more efficiently in the classroom environment. We have a lot more to work on when we're dealing with an andragogic approach as opposed to a pedagogical approach, right? K-12 students up to high school students, they tend to have very little experience that we can use to build on, right? We can maybe use some of their experiences maybe as a foundational, but it's really hard to create lesson plans or support support course objectives with younger students. And I'll talk more about that in a couple of slides, but when we are creating our lesson plans and every course is a little bit different, we want to look at the experiences of our students and find out how can we engage them better? What about this student and this student's experience can we use to incorporate and make a much more robust, much more engaging and efficient lesson plan, right? That's something that our older students have more, have an advantage in. We can use that to be better teachers. But if we move on to how are students oriented in learning, right? What is their orientation? This is also another significant distinction between pedagogy and andragogy. So adult learners or older learners, university learners, they tend to seek information that is useful in their education goals or their career goals or even in their personal lives, right? They are more self-directed, they're more self-aware, they kind of more aware of what their goals and objectives are. So they move in that direction, right? And these students demand, at least they should demand, that the learning that you are providing, the teaching that you are doing is relevant to their real life issues, right? In terms of graduating, getting a degree, getting a good job and moving on with their life. Students tend to be a little bit more vocal about that, older students. College level, university level. Younger students, on the other hand, they're subject centered, right? They're going to go through the sequence in order. They have less knowledge, less information, less experience than the older students. So they have less self-directedness. And I don't mean every younger, of course, there are some very self-aware younger students who might know what they want and what they need, but generally speaking, they don't as much. They use advice and guidance from parents and teachers and guidance counselors to figure out where they're going. Now, another one here that we have is readiness to learn, right? Older students, and I don't mean older, I mean university level students, they tend to be fostered on the fact that they need to graduate and get a job, and that the fact that cost of education is expensive. So they're prepared. They don't want to waste time or waste money. They realize they want to get their ROI, which is the business school term that we all learn, the return on investment. They want to go ahead, they want to get their degree, they want to get their job, and they want to begin working, right? So they are ready to learn for the most part when you get them in front of you in their class, right? And therefore less time and more direct explanation tend to be sufficient for motivating adult learners. And that's a good thing. It makes our life a little bit easier in that regard, right? Younger students usually told what to learn, right? The reason behind their learning is developing their skills to achieve the level of mastery. Some of you might have experienced teaching K-12. That's fantastic. I do. I've taught kindergarten, I've taught high school, I've taught college, I've taught graduate students, I've taught professionals. And generally speaking, the younger students, they're told what to learn, what they're going to learn. So their readiness is occasionally is even reluctance, as we've all seen. But that is another difference between andragogy and pedagogy. Now, the last one here is the motivation. Adult learners tend to be intrinsically motivated, right? Their self-esteem, self-confidence, desire for a good career or a good salary. They are intrinsically, their motivation comes from within for the most part, right? Whereas on the other hand, younger students, K-12 students, they have to kind of be told these things. They are extrinsically motivated from their parents, or from the teachers, right? They want to get good grades or other perks, right? Or they want, they want to know about the consequences for failure and things like this. Now, this is another one that I don't totally agree, but again, it's a pretty young field of research. I do think that college students are motivated by good grades. I do think that college students are motivated by their GPA, and they feel that a good GPA will get them a good job. I do agree with that. But we're talking generally here. So the motivations are different. Now we talk about this, right? Because we want to be better prepared for how we're going to conduct our classes, for how we're going to write our lesson plans, how we're going to do a course objectives. And if we're aware of the differences between the students, we want to make sure that we are writing the more appropriate ones. We want to make sure that we are writing things that are appropriate for college level learners, and that we are not using pedagogy, which is what most of us are taught. You know, we take pedagogy classes, but they're not always as relevant for the college level student. So, and okay, again, it's okay to disagree with me on this. That's totally fine. So again, we have this, and I'm sure you will all get a copy of this, but we do have this little cheat sheet here, right? Pedagogy, self-concept of the learners is dependent, right? Dependent on the teacher, dependent upon the faculty, dependent upon their parents sometimes, right? Whereas andragogy, it's usually self-directed, right? Pedagogy does not usually use the experience of the students, right? Where andragogy does, right? Readiness to learn is directly related to the age level, the curriculum, as opposed to andragogy, which should be developed from the life experience. The orientation to learning is self-centered from a pedagogical approach, and from an andragogical approach, it is task or problem-centered. And the motivation to learn is based on external rewards and punishments in pedagogy, and it's based on internal incentives and curiosity in andragogy. Now, as I said before, andragogy is a relatively new field of research, 50 years, which may sound like a long time, but in the field of research, it's really not very long. So when we learn pedagogy and teachers' colleges and things like this, they might conflate some of these, but the research is really quite interesting in looking at college-age students, teaching college-age students and university-level students, that as opposed to teaching K-12 students. And these are just a few of the topics that I wanted to address. And there's much, much more to learn, of course, about these topics. But when you are preparing your classes, these are things we should be thinking about. How can I teach most effectively and most efficiently if I don't know what that seed needs, right? If I don't know how much water that seed needs or how much sunlight that seed needs, how am I going to do my best job teaching? So that is one thing we should be thinking about. And then I kind of want to move on to, a philosophy of teaching. Now, if I was there in person, I would ask, who has a philosophy of teaching? And some hands would go up and some hands would kind of halfway go up, and some people would look down and not make eye contact with me. And that's completely understandable. But I do want to talk about why we need a philosophy of teaching. And I don't mean, the idea of I'm a constructivist or I'm a social objectivist or I'm a behavioralist, which is all very nice, but I'm talking about a philosophy of teaching that we can use every day in the classroom. One of the things that I promote when I do teacher trainings is that a well thought out, a well articulated philosophy of teaching helps us in many, many ways. It guides us. It gives us a framework for how we feel about teacher-student dynamics, right? It gives us a framework for how we set our student expectations, how we plan lessons and design curriculum, how we even manage a class is framed by our philosophy of teaching. And one of the reasons why I think that this is incredibly important is that it demonstrates that different people with different styles and different strengths can all be good teachers if they start thinking about using those strengths to be better teachers. We don't have to teach the same way. We need to figure out what our skills are and our strengths are and develop them. And a philosophy of teaching helps us do that. It also really does help with administrators and administration, and when you are being observed by someone and they have questions about why did you choose this method, why did you choose this objective, and you say, well, my philosophy of teaching, I believe this, I believe why, and that way at least you have a reason why you do what you do. Now, They may tell you to do it differently anyway, but at least you have a reason. You can explain to someone who's observing you, this is why I do what I do. This is my philosophy of teaching, right? Philosophies of teaching, I've seen them done on a department level. I've seen them done on a school level, and I understand that. It's okay to have an institutional philosophy of teaching, but I really think as individuals, we should have our own philosophy of teaching. Every single person in this presentation, we are all different. We all have our different strengths and weaknesses, and we would approach a class differently. And if I am going to observe a teacher, and I do a lot of teacher observations, and I ask a question, oh, you taught it this way, or this happened and you responded like this. Why? Most teachers can't explain why. It felt right, it feels right, this is how I always do it. Those are all normal answers, and that's fine, but I want a better answer. I want a more thought out answer, right? Well, I believe you could say that, I believe that giving students responsibility or independence or giving them time to think about an answer, or I believe in engaging my students, something to explain why you did it this way. It doesn't mean you're right, by the way. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't change it if your administrator needs you to, but it does explain why. That's what I really like about this. So we're going to look at philosophy of teaching. And again, I'm not talking about behaviorism or any of these other things, which we all learned in while getting our teaching degree, and they're nice. But to really base a lesson plan on them or explain your classroom management skills on these is really not very easy. So I want to give something practical and something simple. So when I work with teachers, I want a succinct, relevant answer. What's your philosophy of teaching? I want a nice answer, something that tells me what I'm going to expect when I go into your classroom. And for me, when people ask me, I tell them, my philosophy of teaching is engagement and accountability. That's my philosophy of teaching. Most of my decisions in my classroom, or when I'm designing a curriculum or setting course objectives, or when I'm having a lesson plan, or even when I'm designing my assessments, they come from the fact that I believe in engagement and accountability. I believe that I have to engage my students if I want to hold them accountable, right? If I can't engage them, if I can't keep them interested, this is my personal opinion belief. This is me. This is not you. This is me. I believe that if I can't keep my students interested in what I want them to learn, then it's not really easy for me to hold them accountable to it, right? You don't have to agree with this, by the way. This is my philosophy. I want to engage them so I can hold them accountable to the curriculum, hold them accountable to each other, and hold them accountable to me. I also believe that I have to be accountable. I have to be professional. I have to do my job as well as I can. So I need to engage my students. This is my philosophy of teaching, and some of you might like it and some of you may not. That's fine. So let's think about your philosophy. How do we start planning a philosophy? Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to have a little Kahoot. The Kahoot is designed to get you to start thinking about the way that you value a classroom. Okay, so just one second, and I will share my screen once more. And let me do that. Okay. And hopefully everyone can see this. I'm going to go over here. And so what you need to do is to go to Kahoot, and you will type in, you can just go to Kahoot IT, as everyone can see right here. Kahoot IT, and you'll put it in, and you'll put in this number right here. You can do this on your phone, you can do this on your laptops. You don't need to download anything. You just go in, you type Kahoot IT, it will bring you here. In the game pin, you will type this number. All right, getting some people. All right. And don't worry, even if you can't log in, you can still see the questions on the screen here. The questions will be broadcast and you can still answer the questions yourself for yourself. Let's see. All right, we're getting some people here. Nice work. All right, a lot of participants. All right. I'll wait about one more minute before I go ahead and share my screen. Okay, 52, 53, not bad. All right. Now, the questions I'm going to ask are about your opinions about education. There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. There are only your feelings about these scenarios. And what we're going to do is this will demonstrate that all of you who are excellent teachers can have different opinions and different preferences and different priorities. And if we all do that, then we have to recognize that we're all not going to teach the same, just like all of our students are not going to learn the same. Okay, so let's go ahead. All right. So, philosophy of teaching. All right. Homework shows a student's what? Ability to complete an assignment timely and accurately, their level of enthusiasm, understanding of a particular subject area, or respect for the rules. You can pick one answer, just one. And again, there are no right answers, there are no wrong answers, there's just your feeling about the classroom. All right, excellent, excellent. So most of you said that homework shows understanding of a particular subject area. The fewest of you said it shows respect for the rules. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You're both correct. But you can see how a teacher who believes that homework is done to demonstrate, how well the student learned the content, and a teacher that says homework is all about rules, they might have a different philosophy of teaching. Not better, not worse, just different. This is important, right? It's especially important for administrators who understand that their faculty may not all teach the same way. Let's do another example. My students and fellow teachers say that I am passionate and intense, somewhat apprehensive or tense, calm, cool, and collected, rigid and authoritative. Again, no right answers, no wrong answers. This is just how you feel. All right, let's see. Ooh, I like it. Most of you say that your students and your teachers would say that you are passionate and intense or calm, cool, and collected. Some of you say that you would be seen as rigid and authoritative. Some of you had said that you'd be somewhat apprehensive. Okay, great. Now, think about how each of these teachers would design a lesson plan. Would they design the lesson plan the same way? Would a rigid and authoritative teacher design a lesson plan the same way that someone who's calm, cool, and collected? Probably not, right? And if you were to share that lesson plan, maybe the calm, cool, and collected teacher's lesson plan would not work really well for a rigid and authoritative teacher, right? It doesn't make it bad, it just makes it different, and we need to be aware of that for ourselves. Next one. I feel most rewarded when students show appreciation to teachers and fellow students, do well on tests and demonstrate subject area mastery, feel good about themselves and their school, or follow the rules established in the class. All right, let's see. Looks like 26 of you, or 40%, feel most rewarded when students feel good about themselves in their school, followed by do well on tests and demonstrate subject area mastery. Then shows appreciation to teachers and fellow students, and then follow the rules established in class. Again, not right or wrong, not good or bad, but think about this. Think about you and your coworkers. You might be teaching differently. Next one. When teaching, I usually talk most of the time in front of the class, write on the board or use other media to explain concepts, refer to reading assignment for examples, walk around the classroom to answer questions. This is usually, I'm sure you do each of these from time to time. I know we all do these all, but usually, what would you say your most is? Okay, most of you said write on the board or use other media to explain concepts, followed by walk around the classroom and answer questions. Some of you talk most of the time in class, and some of you refer to reading assignments or examples. Okay, good. Again, thinking about you, thinking about your philosophy. How are you teaching class? As a teacher, students should see me as an established, incredible model of behavior, an approachable and available resource for students, a dependable source of information and answers, well organized and prepared for the next classroom. I love this one. I love this question. To me, this is one of the more interesting questions. It doesn't mean we are. It's just how we feel that they should see us. Oof, look at that. The vast majority, 67%, want to be seen as approachable and available to students, then followed by well organized and prepared, dependable source of information, established incredible model of behavior. Now, of course, maybe we want all of these things, right? Maybe we want to be seen as all of these, and of course we should. But how do we do that? How do our lesson plans, how do our course objectives, how does our classroom management allow students to see us the way that we want to be seen? Next one. I feel most comfortable in my classroom when students work together to explore topics, students share their ideas with and present to the class, I lead a discussion about a topic or assignment, I am challenged by insightful questions from my students. All right. Nice. Okay, so 33 or 47% of you feel most comfortable in your classroom when you students share their ideas with and present to the class. That's great. Some of you say when you lead the discussion about a topic or assignment. Fantastic. Right? This is just you identifying your classroom perspectives now. I teach mostly through individuals and small group work, lecturing to the class, or classroom-wide activities. Only 3 choices here. All right, look at that. 40% said 49% classroom-wide activities, then lecture into the class, and then individual small group work. Excellent. Now, I will say that there's this movement to stop lecturing in class, and I am in favor of that. However, I've had fantastic faculty that lecture really, really well. I observed someone who was a great lecturer, and the class was listening intently the entire time. Mostly that's not the case, so I'm not a big fan of lecturing, but if you are a lecturer, develop that skill. Develop that skill to engage your class, because lecturing is probably the hardest way to be an effective teacher. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying be aware that it's difficult and it's a skill that needs to be developed and nurtured. Next one. I take pride in my ability to tell a great story orally and or visually, organize and delegate responsibly among small teams, respectfully resolve conflicts and tensions, or lead others by example. All right, most of you, not pretty close. Organize and delegate responsibly among small teams and lead others by example are the highest. Only 60% say tell a great story orally and visually. If that's you, I hope you're the lecturers then, okay? So let's keep going. My students learn best when they get excited about learning by themselves and with others, develop tangible learning goals and ambitions, think critically and challenge the status quo, or follow direction and complete work with accuracy. All right, almost there, almost there. Okay, 36% of you say your students learn best when they think critically and challenge the status quo. I love that. 30% of you said get excited about learning by themselves and others. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Next question. My daily instruction is structured with room for flexibility, spontaneous and often off-script, free-flowing, well-planned and organized, following established procedures, or wait, am I supposed to be teaching right now? Please don't pick green. Please don't pick green. All right, some of you picked green, but most of you like well-planned and organized, following established procedures. That's great. Some of you structured with room for flexibility, some of you spontaneous and often off script, which is not bad, by the way. It's not bad, but it's a skill, right? If you like structure with flexibility, it's a skill and it has to be developed. You have to be able to know what to do when things don't go according to plan, right? If you like being spontaneous, that's fantastic, but you better have a whole reservoir of activities and skills that you can call upon to fix any situation, right? If you like well-planned and organized and established procedures, that's great, but don't be so rigid that your students don't get what you need them to get, right? This is all about self-awareness. Next one. We're almost done, I promise, we're almost done. When my students work in groups, I lead and shape their conversation and activities, listen to their discussion and provide input when needed, observe their interactions and maintain order, require written work of their answers and conclusions. Now, maybe you do all of this and that's fine, but pick the one that you do the most, the one that most represents you as an educator. Listen to their discussion, provide input when needed is the overwhelming leader, followed by lead and shape their conversation activities, as well as observe their interactions and maintain order. This goes to your classroom management. This is an example of how you manage your classroom. Next one. If students are having trouble, I tend to, not always, I tend to offer clues to get the next steps, Tell them what to do or how to do it. Ask them to answer the best ability. See if others are having similar issues before taking action. All right. The winner here would be, most of you offer clues to get to the next steps, followed by tell them what to do or how to do it, then ask them to answer the best of their ability, and then see if others are having similar issues. Okay, next one. Most of my lesson plans include peer tutoring and iteration, role playing, brainstorming, or demonstrating measurable subject knowledge. Maybe it has all of it, maybe it does some of this, but generally speaking. And that should be interaction, of course, my apologies, peer tutoring and interaction. All right, most of you want their students to demonstrate measurable subject knowledge, excellent, followed by brainstorming, then peer tutoring interaction, followed by role playing. Okay, last one, I promised last one. One of my biggest goals is for my students, not me students, but my students to emulate and apply knowledge through observation, work and learn autonomously with proper guidance, perform well within an established learning environment, or excel in interpersonal and group settings. All right. Most of you say work and learn autonomously with proper guidance, followed by excel in interpersonal and group settings, and so on. Now, thank you all for participating in this. Thank you all for answering these questions. The purpose of this, of course, again, is to get you thinking about your philosophy. You just asked 14 questions about what you do in the classroom. And these questions ask you to think about your perspectives and your values and your strengths, and even a little bit to your weaknesses a little bit. And we need this information if we're going to start kind of actively constructing a philosophy. And that's where we're going to move on now to, is let me go ahead and share my screen again. And just a second here. Okay. And here we go. So let me, there we go. Okay. So now that we've done this little bit of this little exercise, getting us to think about ourselves, this little reflection, this kind of self-monitoring of ourselves in a classroom, what do we do next? Well, one of the things that we're going to look at is start thinking about how you would like to describe your philosophy. And here are some of the more common characteristics of someone's philosophy. These are just some of the values. You're free to think of your own, but you'll see that my two are there on the top. That's because I made this list: engagement and accountability. But there's also independence and responsibility. Maybe you believe in respect or achievement, right? Maybe you believe in confidence or comfort or maternalism or openness, right? Maybe you run your classroom through curiosity and precision, or discipline and fear, caring, accessibility, freedom, organization, compassion, acceptance. Maybe you do a little bit of all of these. That's fantastic. But I want you to start thinking now about, if someone were to ask for your two-word philosophy, what would you say? Is your philosophy even on this list? What we're going to do after I'm done presenting, we're going to do a little activity with some of our participants here, and they're going to work on this. And the way that you start crafting your philosophy is that you would choose 4 words that resonate with you, 4 words that kind of, you're like, yes, this is what I value in the classroom. This is how I value myself as a teacher. You pick 4 words, okay? And let's say, for example, you choose these words: engagement, independence, accessibility, and compassion. Maybe those are the words that you choose that you like to employ, or that you like to demonstrate in your classroom. So you choose 4 words, and for each word, you want to write 5 words to describe them. Now, why do we want to do that? Why are we choosing a word and then writing words about that? Where we want you not just to think that, oh, I like the sound of that word. Ooh, curiosity, I like the sound of that. No, we want you to write 5 words to describe curiosity, so that you're really actually jumping into that word and seeing if it does reflect the way that you teach a class, right? You might say, ooh, I love respect. Okay, well then describe it. What does that mean to you, right? What does that mean to you in a classroom situation? Are you really going to use that for your philosophy? So we'll start thinking about this. So let's say if you look at these: engagement, independence, accessibility, and compassion, you come up with 5 words for each. And everyone can be different, and no one's judging you on this. And it doesn't really matter if I like your words or you like my words. It's our own opinion about how this word would be described in an academic setting by an educator. So maybe when you think of engagement, you think of, oh, attention and involvement, responsibility, expectation, and audience, right? And you see responsibility there is, by the way, also on this list. So you can use these words overlap. And maybe in the terms of independence, you think of, well, there's trust and faith and respect and latitude and being earned, right? Maybe that's how you see independence. And maybe the person sitting next to you doesn't see it that way, and that's okay as well. You're working on your own philosophy. Maybe for accessibility, you're thinking, well, I'm available and it's reasonable, and then being open and facilitating and making everything worthwhile and important. That's great. And maybe you like compassion as an educator, and you think that compassion means you're understanding and you're flexible and you're tender and you listen and you have patience. Great. This is what you do. This is what you need to think about. You need to choose these words. And if you can't think of 5 words to describe that word, that may not be the best word for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe you need more time. I don't know. But these words should be words that we value, that we use as a framework and guiding when we do everything within education, whether it's lesson planning or classroom management or whatever. So that's what we do. And then after you take your 4 words and you've written down 5 words to describe them, then you choose the 2 words that you feel best describe your attitude on teaching. So we go from 4 and we go down to 2. And maybe after thinking about this, you decide that your philosophy of teaching is independence and compassion. That's how you approach student-teacher dynamics. Maybe that's how you approach your lesson plans and your group activities. And maybe that's how you approach presentations and homework, is that you approach it with a framework of independence and compassion. And you have this now. And by the way, this is not meant to be limiting. You are not limiting yourself. You are guiding yourself. You're giving yourself a framework, but you're not limited in anything. But if someone comes and says, hey, this is your lesson plan, why are you doing it this way? Well, ideally you can say, well, I believe in this. And these aspects, this lesson plan reflects my philosophy of teaching, that I believe in independence of my students. I believe in compassion for my students. And maybe you don't like any of these, and that's okay, right? But I think it's important for us as educators to realize that we can all be excellent teachers and have different strengths and values and perspectives, as long as we're working and using them to be better teachers. So that's where we want to start. Okay. So now you have 10 words. You've got 10 words. Actually, probably have 12 words, right, to describe your philosophy, right? And we'll do this in the next section a little bit. We'll practice this a little bit. But now you can start thinking about your philosophy, right? But it is important, and I want you to remember that your philosophy can evolve over time. Some think your philosophy should evolve over time. When you're a new teacher at 22 or 24 or 26, and you're a crafty veteran teacher at 55 or 60, if you have the same strength, perspective, and values as you did 40 years ago, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, right? maybe our philosophies should evolve, right? I know mine has. I know that mine has, from engagement and accountability. When I think about the way that I taught 20 years ago, I know that I've evolved. I'm not the same teacher I was. I have more strengths and more weaknesses than I had before. My values have certainly evolved over my 20 years of teaching. My perspectives have changed. When I started teaching, I was teaching as a 24-year-old in Japan. I was bad at it. I was not a good teacher when I started, and I got better. Right? I think about myself teaching back then and what I do now, and how I approached my classes and what I thought about students and what I thought about administrators, what I thought about being given a curriculum and what I thought about being asked to create my own curriculum. It's different now. So like I said, this should not be limiting you. This should be supporting you and giving you guidance and a framework for being a teacher that knows what they want to do and how they want to do it. So your philosophies can evolve over time. So I think the time is right. If anyone has any questions or concerns or disagreements are even more fun than questions. Please feel free to ask any questions, and then when questions are over, we can then move on to the next part of this. The polite pausing before the questions.
So we have a few questions here.
Sure.
One of the participants would like to know, in terms of first generation learners, what kind of teaching philosophy would be best?
It's a great question. If I understand, you're saying, in terms of first generation learners, what kind of philosophy teaching would be best? If that's the question, my answer is, it would depend on the type. It depends. I always hate depends. It depends on the type of teacher that you are. You and I might approach first generation students differently. But what we can think about is, you want a philosophy that includes support, understanding, patience, right? That's something that we would want to do. Now, how you frame that is going to be personal based upon your strength and your ability to support them, your ability for empathy. And I'll give you an example of what I mean, why I say it would be different for each of us. If you yourself were a first generation student when you got to college, you would have a very different philosophy than I would, because all my family went to college. I've got many PhDs in my family. So I would say that the foundation of your philosophy would include support, empathy, understanding, and accessibility, meaning being approachable, right? Making sure that first generation students knew that they have resources to go to. But I can't tell you what your philosophy should be because we're different people. And I hope that helps a little bit. Was there another question I think I saw somewhere?
Yes. How do we help students become more comfortable with evaluation?
Sorry, repeat that. How do we help students become more
comfortable with evaluation? As in exams.
Confident when they're taking exams?
Yes.
Okay. I have very strong opinions about this. I'm not sure it will work or not, but I've been doing a lot of teacher training lately with schools that only have 2 or 3 exams over the course of a semester. Therefore, each exam is so heavily weighted and there is so much riding on each exam that the student knows that if they do poorly, it could ruin their GPA or their grades. So what I am a firm believer in is that we need to have multiple exams, many, what's the word I'm looking for? Many high frequency, low stake. I'm a big believer in high frequency exams with low stakes so that students can get comfortable. They know that if they make a mistake, it's not going to derail their GPA. When I work with departments, I tell departments, students have to be able to fail an exam and still get an A in your class, right? You have to have enough exams where students can fail something, or not terribly fail, but get a 60, but still have the ability to demonstrate improvement and mastery and then get an A. Because if they don't have that opportunity, then they're going to feel so much pressure for each exam. Does that help a little bit?
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Rupa, and I really enjoyed your Kahoot session. It gave us a lot of time to self-introspect and reflect upon our own teaching. So I have a simple question here. I think like all of us would resonate with this. Actually today's students, especially with the online classes, they have this tendency to depend on the internet and the new media, and then they then tend to become a little complacent in the classes because they have the internet finally to rely on. So how do we engage them in the online sphere, competing with the internet? How do we do that?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Now, I am not familiar with your online mode of instruction. If you use Zoom or is everyone using Teams? What mode do you use? Teams. Okay. Now, I am not as familiar with Teams as I am with Zoom, but what I can tell you is that this is a multi-level answer. One, if we don't want our students to be complacent, then we ourselves cannot be complacent. We must model the expectation that we have for them. If we look bored, unhappy, resigned, if we look like we don't want to be here, they will see that and they won't want to be here. We have to, like Mahatma Gandhi said, we have to be the change we want to be. We want our students to change. We don't want them to be complacent, then we can't be complacent. Second, now, I use Zoom, so I'm not familiar with Teams very much. I'm not sure what the functionality is with Teams, but in Zoom, we have chats. And I did a lot of online teaching. And what I do is I make sure that I am engaging the students via chat all the time, constantly with questions, asking them to answer something. And then I made my participation scores reliant on their chat participation. That's how I would get them to engage, right? Because the problem is, you're right, there is an entire internet that we are competing with, which means we need to continue doing that. Now, also, Zoom has breakout rooms so that I can send a group of students into another room and then jump in that room, right? So I can still do cooperative learning groups in an online format, and by sending groups to different rooms with a series of questions that they need to answer and come back to. So that's using the functionality of Zoom, and I'm sorry if Teams doesn't have that function, but those are some things that you need to be doing. And most importantly, at the beginning, review your expectations. Let them also help, make it a contract. Let your students participate and say, this is the expectation for an online class. Maybe it's cameras on, maybe it's unmuted, maybe it's everyone has to write something in the chat every 5 minutes to let you know that they're still there. But make it cooperative, so that the students might feel that they have a voice in that classroom. So that's what I do in my online classes, which I've been teaching just like everybody else. But that's how I engage my students in the classroom. It's a great question, by the way. It's a great question. Any other questions? I think we'll have time for one more question before we should move on, and then maybe we have some more questions at the end.
Hello, doctor. I
Yes.
hope I'm audible. So my question is related to motivation, readiness to learn and motivation to learn. I know you haven't touched upon those topics yet, but I'm a little bit curious. When we are discussing andragogy and pedagogy, how does that come into play when we are moving on to an online platform? Teaching students, motivation becomes a very key factor in kind of keeping them engaged. Not only that, motivation for teachers themselves is a very important thing to understand. So I just wanted to know your opinion on how do we define or redefine the ideas of readiness to learn and also being motivated to learn from a teacher's perspective as well as from a student's perspective.
Good question. Are we specifically talking about in a university or college situation?
Yes, specifically college or university situation.
Okay, good. I always like to distinguish between the two. So one of the things that we want to be doing with in terms of motivation and readiness is we have to be more transparent with our students. Luckily, with motivation, older students or college students, I should say, are already tend to be more motivated. So what we need to do is be transparent in purpose. Now, I use that term transparent in purpose a lot. And in fact, I'll show you a demonstration of that in the next section. Students need to know why they're doing what they're doing. And I mentioned it, I think, in one of the previous slides. Students know why they're there. They know why they are there. So we need to be transparent in what we want them to do and why we want them to do it. I treat my students as equals, and I make sure that they know for every activity, they know why they're doing it. And that keeps them on an equal footing with me. It allows me to set an expectation saying, you know what to do, you know why we're doing it, and it's okay to disagree with it, but that's the expectation. And once I've told them that, once I've explained what we're doing and why we're doing it, and I've demonstrated that transparency, I can hold them accountable to that. So that if they don't meet my expectations, I can say, we talked about this, we discussed this, we were transparent with what we wanted. So that is a way that I try to do that in an online environment. The second thing I do as well, and this doesn't always work. We're teachers, sometimes we do things that don't work, but it's been getting better, is I've been trying to incorporate more opportunities for students to jump from class to an online assignment or through an internet-based assignment and then back into the classroom. Meaning we're in Zoom, I'm giving my lesson plan, I let them go online to search for specific information and then come back into class. Because students would much rather be online somewhere, but if they're gonna go online, I want to try to force them to go where I want them to go. Does it always work? No. Is it getting better? Yes. So if the fear is that they're going to go online or if they're not motivated to stay in class, then use it. Use it to your advantage. I hope that helps a little bit. Okay. So I think I only have about 35 minutes left. Is that accurate? Maybe?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, then let me keep going here because I got a lot left to do and I want to try to finish as much as possible. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. All right. Oops. All right, I know what I did here. There it is. Okay. Okay. And okay, so let me go ahead. And so we're talking about this idea of philosophy of teaching. So I want to now, let's actually practice this. We have some participants here and they're going to help us do this. Okay. And this is a lesson that I do when I'm in person and we have more time to help teachers start thinking about their philosophy of teaching and have something practical at the end of the lesson, at the end of our workshop. So we can't really do this here, but we're going to have our willing participants answer these following questions. And these questions are also designed to get you to think about your experience as a teacher. So the first question is, and any of the volunteers, any of the participants can answer this. Describe the best learning experience you had as a student. And I say best, meaning you can decide for yourself what the best was and what made it the best. Was it the methodology that a professor or a teacher used? Was it the feelings that you felt afterward? Is it that it was relevant to you at the time? So I would like one of the chosen participants, I believe you were already selected, to think about this for a second and answer this question. What's the best learning experience you had as a student? Not as a teacher, as a student. Anyone?
I'd like to share my best learning experience. That was in the 10th standard. I was very scared of writing composition. So my teacher told me, okay, you write 2 lines. Forget about writing 10 lines. Write 2 lines today. Then tomorrow you can write 3 lines. That's how I developed my ability to write. And I thought it was a very good way of making me write.
Excellent. What I take from that is that your teacher gets set attainable goals. Attainable goals. You didn't start a composition with a paragraph or 2 pages. They said something that they gave you a task that you could accomplish. 2 sentences, right? 2 sentences, 3 sentences. It becomes less scary. Then you start setting slightly more difficult but still attainable goals. Excellent, right? Does anyone else have one other example before we move to the next question?
Hello, am I audible? I think one of my best learning experiences was when I submitted my master's dissertation, and specifically so I was someone who feared math growing up, and coming from an economics background, I had to apply a lot of statistics and use data and apply all the practical concepts there. And the outcome really gave me a lot of confidence and really made me like the subject even more towards the end of the degree.
Fantastic. From fear to like, right? From fear to the ability to know that you can do something to actually developing liking something. I think that is fantastic. Now, why do I ask these questions? Because as teachers, we are naturally predisposed to teach the way that we felt was effective, okay? So here's my next question. We have some for your best experience as a student. So what is the best experience you've had as a teacher? As a teacher, as an instructor, are there any similarities to the learning experience you described from the first question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is for my creative writing class. So usually when you have a writing class, there are some students who are excited, but most of them are like, let's do something else. Let's watch a movie or something like that. So for this class, what I basically did was, actually my daughter was telling me that there are different perspectives to popular songs, like, Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license. There is the perspective of the driver who's following Olivia Rodrigo as she's moving her boyfriend, lost boyfriend. So I played out one of those YouTube videos and I asked my students to write different perspectives of their favorite numbers. And this was an eye-opener for me, and my students enjoyed it thoroughly because, they had, at different perspective of Justin Bieber's, anyone, and even one of the BTS numbers, of course, thankfully in English. So this was a very enjoyable class, and what I understood from that experience was, like, if you can connect to the students and speak to them in their language, they are more receptive and they are willing to learn. So that's it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. But think about that, and that kind of goes back to this idea of understanding our students and who they are, and as seeds, what they need. Do they need Rodrigo and driver's license, or do they need Justin Bieber, or who do they need? What can we do to connect with them, right? And I don't know for everybody else, but for me, when I do make that connection, it feels great. It's fantastic. It just makes it so, it just feels so much easier. It's like weight lifted off my shoulder. And whether it's your children who have to tell you what the kids are into now and what you should use, fantastic, right? And maybe you can use that experience in other areas. And maybe we can use that experience to do it before the anxiety of the students come in. We start with that skill that you just applied, right? Maybe we don't need to wait until after they're nervous about participating in that class. Okay, time. I want to keep going. All right, so now this is a more difficult question. It's something that most people don't think about. So it's okay to take a second about it, because I don't know if you've ever been asked this. What are you trying to achieve in your students with your teaching? And think about it for a second. I mean, are we just trying to get them to graduate? Maybe that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to graduate. Maybe that's it. But is there anything else we're trying to do?
Audience can unmute and respond to the speaker.
Am I audible?
Yes.
This is Bella here. I believe when we teach our students, the thing that I want the outcome in the students is transformation.
I love transformation. I love transformation. I love the idea of beginning as A and ending as B. It also allows us to, we would each have our own opinion about what we are transforming into. Anyone else?
Good morning. This is Preeti. According to me, education is modification of behavior. So I judge my students when they change their behavior with moral values rather than getting more success in the subject.
That actually intrigues me. And I think that's an entire workshop for another time. The idea of modification of behavior to an end. And I like that. I've never really heard it described like that. Now, the question that I would have moving forward in a whole nother workshop is what is that behavior we are modifying to? What does that new behavior allow that they weren't able to do before? Now, granted, not a question for right now, but it's an excellent, very intriguing idea that I will probably be thinking about later on tonight. Okay, one more person. What are you trying to achieve in your students with your teaching?
I would like to say that if we are able to make the learner learn something on their own without the teacher's help, we have achieved the work of a teacher. A teacher cannot be with the student all the time. So the student should be able to learn something on her own after the teacher has finished her class, something related and connected.
Yes. I like the idea of providing my students with a skill set that allows them to become autonomous learners. Maybe not even a skill set, maybe it's a mindset that allows them to become autonomous learners, that makes them want to continue learning even after they leave my class. I love it. Now, we've got three different ideas here from three different teachers. We got transformation, we've got modification of behavior, we've gotten autonomous learning. Each of these three teachers are looking for different things, and they're related. Of course, they're related, but these are different things, and you would do it differently. The outcome of transformation or modification or autonomy, you would approach that differently. Each of you would. So these are things that would affect your philosophy that you develop. Interesting. Okay. And again, the purpose of this is for you to realize that we're all different teachers. We don't have to teach the same. We have the same end result. I mean, our students have to learn and graduate, of course, that's our job. But the way that we do it, the way that we use ourselves in the classroom are going to be different. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Okay, another question. We're going to skip this question because of time, but the question is here, and maybe you could think about it later. Why is this important to you? Why is transformation important to you? Why is modification of behavior important to you? Why is creating autonomous learners important to you? That's kind of a self-reflection question, but I want to make sure I finish everything, so we're going to move on. Okay, and again, this one is also one we're going to move on. So when you think about your objectives for your questions, how do you do this? What skills do you employ? What strategies, right? And do you do it well, right? And if not, what do you need to improve upon in order to do it well, right? So what strategies, what approaches, right, do you use in your learning environment, right? And again, because of time, we're just going to keep moving on here. Now, this is another interesting question. Think about the strategies you use right now. Think about the strategies that you use right now. And I want you to think about why you use these strategies as opposed to others. And I'll give you an example. I am a big believer in classroom autonomy, meaning I want my students to work together in groups without me. I want to create an environment where the students are going to look to each other first for solutions, for answers, before they come looking to me, okay? So in order to do that, I've got to provide them with the information they need for every assignment. I've got to provide them the skills to be able to work together in cooperative learning groups or even autonomous learning groups. I've got to be able to, and this is the one that's hard for me, be patient enough for them to go and start working together. There's an excellent phrase I was taught when I was observed one day. I was observed in my classroom and I had my students go do a activity together. And as soon as I finished the activity, I went over and I sat down with the group. And I was trying to, help because that's what I want to do. And after the observation, the observer said, "Why did you go sit down with them so fast?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to make sure they were doing what I wanted them to do." And she said, "Yeah, but as soon as you sat down, you became the focus. They stopped working together and they started looking to you." And she said, and I remember this, "Don't overwater the flowers." And that kind of resonated with me, meaning give them time, be patient, let them start working on their own before I go in to help them. Don't overwater them, give them time. Because out of my own desire to help them, I would run over and sit down and we start talking. But then I took the focus from the team, from the peer learning, and it became teacher-centered again. And I remember that. So think about the strategies that you use, that you've chosen. Why do you do that when there are other ones to do? Okay. Now, what we're going to do next is this. We're going to actually have our people here, our wonderful volunteers, are actually going to do this. And we'll do it much more quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But I'm going to give you a few minutes here to choose some of these words that I showed you before, write them down, and write down how you would describe them. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and, oh, that's not right. Let me fix that. That's always something with PowerPoint. But in teaching, we don't worry too much about this. We just go ahead and fix it. Our students know that we are not perfect. Let me just do that. And I'll do that. And let me do this here. And And I'll back here. And there we go. I found the one I'm looking for. And now I will share my screen again so you can see the words that I'm going to. Okay. All right. So there's people, my wonderful volunteers, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to go ahead and choose 4 of these words as individuals. This is an individual activity. You choose 4 of these words and start writing down words. There. That was very exciting right there for a moment. And as you do this, as our volunteers write down these 4 words and then the 5 words to describe them, I want to talk a little bit here about these characteristics. So when you are thinking about words for your philosophy, you want to find words that people could say about you when you are being observed. You know, when someone comes up and says, "Oh, I like the way you use discipline in the class," or "I like the way that you make everyone feel very comfortable." These are things you should be thinking about. Well, is that my philosophy, or is that something that's just a little bit extra that comes from it, right? These are things you want to be thinking about, and don't be limited by this list. You could choose whatever you like. And when I started working on this topic, the topic arose because when I was working with teachers, I noticed that a lot of the teachers use different skills. And I want to look at maternalism. I worked with a woman, she was so motherly with the students, and it worked so well for her. And she was so caring and nurturing and kind and listened and open, and it was wonderful. But that was nothing that I could ever do. I didn't have that skill set. I wasn't a parent. I didn't feel that way about my students, but it worked for her. But if you had tried to force me into that style of teaching, it would not have worked. And then I also had this other thing. I'm actually a very, very tall person. I'm 2 meters tall. I'm 250 pounds, and I'm just a big person. And so then I was like, well, maybe discipline and fear is the way I will run my class. That's my philosophy, you know, learning through discipline. That didn't work for me either. It didn't work. It's not my style. I was someone who, you know, I liked the freedom and responsibility. I liked freedom and I liked independence, but was that the way that I was going to be teaching? So as I mentioned before, these philosophies should evolve, right? When I was first teaching in Japan, I didn't know what kind of teacher I was going to be. And it took years for me to realize that this is something that I wanted to develop, something that I wanted to think about. So that's my opinion, and it's okay if you disagree with this. You are more than welcome to have your own opinions, but I do think you do want to have an idea about how you conduct your class. So if there are any volunteers ready to tell us one word that they've chosen, one word that they've selected, and how they would describe it, I would love to hear one word. And then after that person goes, someone else could use another word, and that would be great.
Participants can raise their hands and will be given access to the mic.
I chose engagement, and the 5 words that I used to describe it would be interaction, growth, ideas, communication, and application.
Can you repeat the first word, please? The first word.
Interaction.
Interaction. I love it. I love it. If you notice, those are not the words that were on the sample that we gave, okay? Those are excellent ways to start thinking about engagement. Anybody else have a word that they would like to share with us?
Responsibility, authority, duty, importance, and the trust factor.
What was the last one?
Trust.
Trust. I love this. I love that I get engagement and then I get authority, duty, trust. I love that. We have different teachers with different perspectives that can all do a great job, right? I'm not gonna try to get a teacher who's all about authority, duty, and trust, because that's not me, trying to teach like me, right? That doesn't work. Good. Can I have another volunteer, please?
Sachi?
Yeah, good morning. I would choose compassion with additional words like understanding, empathy, listening, inclusivity.
Love it. Compassion with understanding, empathy, listening, inclusivity. By the way, empathy is one of my favorite words of all time. I'm a big believer in empathy. I think empathy will save the world. I try to be as empathetic as I can in all situations. I believe empathy reduces conflict. So I love empathy. I love it. I love it. So we've got compassion, we've got engagement, we've got authority. What else? One more.
I chose independent,
Good.
confident, self-sufficient, critical.
Nice. Confident, self-sufficient, critical. Critical in a positive way, right? Like positive critical. Okay, good. Good. Yeah. Excellent. Let's do one more. I could do this all day, but we'll just do one more.
Bella Thomas?
I choose maternalism, and the words that I would like to describe here is positive affirmation. Practicing positive affirmation, interaction, building hope. These are the words that I believe in transforming the students' learning outcome.
Great. Tell me the word. I got positive affirmation, but tell me the word that you are describing one more time, please.
I spoke positive affirmation, loving, caring, interaction, hope.
Love it. Again, these are great. Now, the purpose of this, not the purpose, I'm sorry, the way that we would do this is that you would do this for 4 different words, and you would narrow this down to the words that are the most reactive to you. So let's just go ahead. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Oh, wait, we got some more hands are raised here. So I guess we could do 1 or 2 more people. I see some hands raised. No, maybe. I thought maybe. No? Okay. So then the question is going to be here as coworkers, and there's so much wonderful research on teachers supporting teachers and how coworkers best support each other. And that's a great question for this. Let's say we've got people who said independence, compassion, engagement, authority. How do we support each other when we have these different philosophies of teaching? How do we do this and recognize my philosophy is engagement and accountability, and you believe in independence and compassion? We can both be right. How do we support each other? I don't want to change your philosophy and you don't want to change mine. So how do we support each other as coworkers and teachers? That's something to be thinking about. And how do administrators, how do we allow our teachers to be the best teachers they can while using their own philosophy? Administrators, and I am an administrator now. I am, and I have to be very careful that I'm not trying to change the teachers into the model of me. That's not what we want to do. That doesn't benefit anybody. And I'm not trying to get any of you to be like me. So, all right, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to finish this up. We'll get out on time, I promise. Maybe promise. Here we go. Okay. So what we would do here is after this is we would choose the words that you like best, and then what would happen is you would want to write a paragraph. Right? And you don't have to do this right now, but you could probably do it for homework. But you want to write it out. You want to articulate your ideas. And I'm going to show you some samples of philosophies of teaching based upon different characteristics. But you want to write something down. So here's one here. And as I read this, think about the key points of the philosophy of teaching here. Think about what the key points are. So there isn't a teacher who hasn't had well-conceived and designed lesson plans thwarted by disinterested or apathetic students. Great intentions and lesson plans aren't enough. Students need to be engaged and accountable if there's any hope of learning. Students need to be brought into the fold. They need to want to listen to what you are trying to teach them. Very few people willingly learn the difference between identifying and non-identifying adjective clauses. If you engage them, they may listen. If they listen, they may learn. However, paying attention in class isn't enough. It takes homework, scaffolding, and assessment. Students need to realize that actions have consequences. If they choose not to do any work, they will not learn, no matter how engaging you are. They need to know that failure is an option. Students need to be aware that homework needs to be done, questions need to be asked, and classes need to be attended, and that ultimately it is their choice. I choose to hold students accountable to the class, the instructor, their classmates, and themselves. I inform them what happens to students who don't act like students. I do this early in the term, and I do it often. This, by the way, you don't have to agree with any of this. You can disagree with all of this. This is not your philosophy of teaching. This is a sample. But what are the words? Are the key words here, right? We have engaged, we have accountable, engaged again, paying attention, consequences, engaging, attended, accountable, right? This is someone's philosophy, right? And I'm not asking you to agree with it. I'm not asking you to disagree with it. I'm asking you to look at it for what do you think this teacher's going to do, right? What do you think this teacher's going to do? This teacher believes in engagement and accountability. What will your philosophy look like? How is it going to help you, right? So again, you don't have to, agree with it, but you should probably respect the teacher who tries to follow it. So let's look at one more. Okay, let's look at one more here. And then we'll have a few minutes left. I believe that the most important motivation in education is curiosity. If I can create an environment where students are curious about my content, then my job is cut in half. I need to create lesson plans and assessments that open the door that students want to open and go through. That is my responsibility as an educator. However, students, especially college level students, value their independence and free thinking. As a result, I create an environment where students have the freedom to be part of the class. They contribute to the student-centered parts of my syllabus and have significant decision-making privileges in my class. However, it is my responsibility to make students aware of the consequences of violating my trust and hold them accountable when they do break the rules. Right? Now, these are those words. These are the key words in this. Motivation, curious, independence, free thinking, freedom, contribute, decision-making, responsibility, and accountable. So what do you think this person's philosophy is? This particular teacher, their philosophy is curiosity and independence. And maybe that you agree with it. Maybe you agree with part of it. Maybe you agree with none of it, and that's fine. What I hope I am doing now is allowing you the opportunity to create your own philosophy, right? Think about what you want to do, how you want to do it, right? So that you can not defend it, but you can validate it when you're being observed or when students are curious about what's going on. That's what we want you to be able to do. And you should keep your paragraph, right? Hold on to it. See if it evolves. See if you become a different type of teacher, right? That's what we want to do. So just remember, your philosophy can change over time. It probably should change over time. There's something you should be thinking about. So I am finished. I want to thank everyone for your time, for your patience. We have about 5 minutes left, so if there's any more questions, I'm happy to answer. But this is my email address. If anyone has any questions, I'm always happy to correspond via email. But thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more questions.
Please, I love questions.
Yes, so one of the participants says that it is frequently observed that students get demotivated, especially if the subject that they are studying is not in their, native language, like, language barriers, especially when they come from vernacular languages. So how do we cope with such students?
So we're referring to students who have language issues in the class. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Now we're really talking my point. So what I am teaching in the business school at Arizona State University or in engineering at Arizona State University, we have students who are not first language, not native English speakers. And one of the things that we do, and it's a lot of work the first time you do it, but it's much less work the second time, is we create vocabulary lists, potential word issues. And we have this archive of words that we have for students. And then the first day of class, we say, these are the words you're expected to know. Right? These are the words that we're going to be using. And at the first time you do it for your first course, it does take a lot of time to set that up. But once we do that, every semester, as you kind of alternating or modifying it, it does get significantly easier. But we want to let them know that, yeah, these are words. These are the words. Maybe they're jargon, meaning they're specific to that term, or maybe they're just more, higher critical thinking skills. But we tend to create an archive of English words that we know they're going to need to know. And then in addition to that, we have English language resources. That was my office. That's the one that I ran to provide English language resources. I don't know if you have that at the Jyotinivas College or not, but a good way to start is to start with a lexical archive. Another question I see.
How do we make the students do self-appraisal so that they know where they stand?
Okay. Okay, that's really interesting question. How do we make them self-appraise? We don't make them. We have to guide them through self-appraisal, self-reflection. Okay. And we need to give them multiple opportunities to do that. So self-appraisal usually comes first and foremost through the grades. That's how students recognize themselves and they evaluate themselves. But we want to show them there's a lot of other ways for them to recognize what they do in class, through contribution, through participation, through support of each other in class. We want to be overt, explicit about, praise might not be the right word, but helping students identify what they do well and what they do not do well. So we want to provide opportunity and context for students to learn how to self-appraise. By the way, self-appraisal is a skill. It is not innate. Right? It is not something that everyone does automatically. We are self-critical automatically, but we do not self-appraise automatically. So that is actually something that you could, develop a little curriculum for, which is skills to have students learn how to accurately assess their own skills. But that's a great topic, and that's another workshop that we can work on. I'm happy to do it.
Dr. Gitanjali, can you unmute yourself? Okay, moving on. How do we address adult learners whose immediate motivation is not to get a job, but get into research?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I missed the beginning of that.
Yes. How do we address adult learners whose immediate motivation is not getting a job, but getting into research?
How do we, I'm sorry, again, it was a little noise. How do we do what?
How do we motivate or engage adult learners who don't really want to get a job immediately, but would rather go into academics or research?
Right. Okay. So we're looking to motivate adult learners or college learners who are looking not for the job of her get into research, which is an entirely different track, entirely different train. One thing is you need models. You need models. You need people who are in research to demonstrate what they had to do to get there, right? And that may not be you as the instructor. It may be someone that you have to bring in, but you need to bring in someone who made that transition into research, right? And you need to let them see what that looks like, right? And even this, if they don't know anything, if you're starting from zero and you want to motivate them, get 5 bullet points from someone who has made that transition and get 5 bullet points. Simple, easy, right? And you show the students this and you let them know these are 5 things that are going to happen. And then as they approach each one, then you elaborate on each of those bullet points so that it becomes more robust and more informative. But the best way to do that is with people who are there. Guest speakers are fantastic for that type of requirement.
Thank you, Dr. Bob, for this intriguing session. You have helped us see ourselves in a new light, especially through fun-filled activities and interaction. We look forward to listening to you again tomorrow.
Yes, I will look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. We will talk about Bloom's taxonomy and we will have a lot of fun, I hope.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope you had an engaging session.
Thank you, everybody.
We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. The feedback form for today's session has been posted in the chat box and will be available for 1 hour. Thank you all. Have a good day.